You know that feeling, right? When you start a new project, a new job, maybe a new leadership role, even just a big New Year's resolution.
Oh, yeah.
You get this massive surge of energy. You're buying the new notebooks, color-coding the calendar. You feel, completely unstoppable.
The launch phase, it's electric. It is probably the best feeling in the world.
It is. But then, fast forward, maybe 6 months, maybe just 6 weeks, and that electricity it cuts out.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just tired, you're almost cynical. The same project that thrilled you now just feels like a weight.
And that is the classic momentum trap. We mistake that initial burst of adrenaline for actual, endurance. And when the adrenaline fades, we think something's gone wrong.
Instead of realizing we just ran out of fuel.
Exactly. We just ran out of fuel.
Well, today we are doing a deep dive into a source that says this crash isn't an accident at all. It's actually a design flaw in how we approach things like mission and leadership. We're looking at a leadership guide titled Formed for the Nations, From Commitment to Commission by Chris R. Villasis. Now, I know the title sounds a little niche. It's written for pastors, for mission leaders.
But stick with us. Please do.
Right.
Because the psychology in this guide, it applies to anyone trying to lead a purpose-driven life. Whether you're leading a team, a family, or really just yourself, the principles of burnout are universal.
We've also got this really powerful visual aid that goes with the text. I want to describe it for you because it really anchors everything we're about to discuss.
It's a striking image.
It really is. Imagine a dense, dark forest. It's deep green, almost ancient looking. And right there in the middle, there is a waterfall.
And the water is just flowing effortlessly into this crystal clear blue pool. It's not chaotic or violent. It's powerful, but also really peaceful.
And the source uses this specific image to argue against our modern obsession with hustle.
Right. Think about a waterfall. It doesn't try to flow. It doesn't wake up at 5 a.m., chug 3 espressos, and then stress about its water output for the day.
Right.
It flows simply because there is a river feeding it. It's an overflow of what's already there.
Which is the total opposite of how most modern leadership works. We're usually running on fumes. So our mission today is to unpack what this source calls the formation gap. We're going to look at why we prioritize momentum, how fast we're going over formation, who we are becoming in the process.
And just a fair warning, this guide asks some pretty uncomfortable questions. It's not a how-to for doing more. If anything, it's a critique of why we're all doing so much in the first place.
Let's jump into that critique. The guide opens with a section called The Formation Gap, Passion versus Pathway. And right away in Appendix 1, it just drops this hammer of a question.
It really does. The question is, what if the greatest weakness in modern missions is not lack of passion, but lack of formation?
That's a heavy pivot.
Yeah.
Usually when an organization is failing, the first thing we say is, people just don't care enough. We need more passion, more hype.
Exactly. We think the solution is a louder pep rally. But this source argues that we have tons of passion. People are willing to go. They're willing to start new things.
Okay.
The problem is we haven't given them the internal structure, the formation, to actually sustain that passion when things get hard.
The guide has this tool, Exercise 1, the commitment formation on it. It's like a diagnostic. How does that work?
So it points out that in so many organizations, and this is definitely true for startups and nonprofits, not just churches, we celebrate the...
Yes, the moment of commitment.
We celebrate the commitment. It's the launch day party, the signing of the contract.
Onboarding selfie you post online.
Precisely. But we operate on this hidden assumption that the formation, the actual maturing process you need to keep that commitment, will just, download into your brain automatically.
That's like assuming that buying a gym membership is what makes you fit. You celebrate buying it, but you haven't actually lifted a single weight yet.
That is the perfect analogy. So the guide asks leaders to fill in this blank, and I'd really encourage you listening to try this mentally. In our context, people are committed to blank, but are rarely formed to blank.
Ooh, that is probing. Can you give me an example of how that might fill out?
Sure. A common one might be people are committed to social justice, but are rarely formed to love their difficult neighbor.
Wow.
Or people are committed to taking on leadership roles, but are rarely formed to handle criticism without spiraling.
That hits home. It's really just identifying the gap between the big ideal we sign up for and the actual character it takes to live it out.
And the text argues that when we prioritize momentum, the visible stuff over maturity, the internal character, there is a real psychological cost.
Or burnout.
That's where burnout lives. It's that gap. We expect this high-level performance from people, but we haven't given them the internal training to support it.
So if we're stuck in that gap, all excited but not really formed, how do we get out? This brings us back to that waterfall image.
Yes. Chapter 1 is titled Witness Before Method, and it's basically an identity check. The source contrasts what it calls performance-driven evangelism with witness as overflow.
Performance-driven just sounds exhausting, like a sales job where you have a quota hanging over your head.
It is. If you feel like you have to sell your message or close the deal, you're operating out of performance. It feels heavy. It feels forced.
So if it feels heavy, what does that reveal?
It reveals that I think it's all up to me, that if I don't perform, the whole mission fails. But the waterfall, it just flows.
Right.
So the guide has exercise 2, identity before activity. It challenges you to rewrite your understanding of your role. Instead of seeing it as persuasion, see it as participation.
Participation in what, exactly?
In work that's already happening. The prompt is, because I am in Christ, I witness by. The whole idea is that you aren't the manufacturer of the water. You're just the terrain where it flows.
That's a massive relief, to be honest.
Wow.
You don't have to be the generator. You just have to be the channel.
Exactly.
Okay, but here's where I want to push back a little, or at least play devil's advocate. We live in a world that worships efficiency. We want the fastest route, the quickest hack, the scalable solution. And this source, it seems to be arguing for, well, for being inefficient.
Oh, absolutely. And it's completely unapologetic about it. In chapters 3 and 4, the source critiques rushing outcomes. It asks, where are you rushing outcomes instead of walking patiently with people?
But isn't efficiency a good thing?
Yeah.
I mean, if I can help 10 people in an hour versus just one person, isn't that better?
In manufacturing, yes.
Yeah.
In data entry, sure. In relationships, the source argues absolutely not. This leads to exercise 4, the pace of love. And to your point about efficiency, this exercise is, it's a nightmare for type A personalities.
Lay it on us. What's the exercise?
The instruction is to commit to a relational practice, a meal, a coffee, a long conversation with zero agenda for results.
0. So you're not trying to steer the conversation, not trying to pivot to the deep stuff.
Nope. You were just there. The source argues that efficiency is actually the enemy of love. You can't be efficient with people. If you treat a person like a project to be completed, they feel it.
Right.
And if you try to force some kind of spiritual breakthrough before they're ready, you might actually do more harm than good.
That sounds incredibly difficult for someone who is result-oriented. It feels like you're just wasting time.
It does feel like wasting time if your metric is closed deals, but
Yeah.
if your metric is relationship, it's the only way. This gets into the discernment in the harvest section. It's about the tension between sowing broadly, just being kind to everyone, and inviting decisively.
That's the real balance, isn't it? My question is, how do you know the difference? When do I just drink the coffee and shut up, and when do I actually challenge them?
That is the million-dollar question. And the guide suggests that a lot of the time, our timing is selfish. We force a conversation because we want to feel productive.
Or we avoid one because we're scared.
Or we avoid one because we're scared. It's a mirror. The guide asks, what fear was operating beneath that decision? Am I pushing this because I'm afraid of failing my quota? Or am I staying silent because I'm afraid of rejection?
It demands a level of self-awareness that, momentum-driven leadership just doesn't have time for.
Exactly. Momentum doesn't have time for self-reflection. Formation absolutely demands it.
Okay, so let's say you've slowed down, you're having the coffee, you aren't rushing, but eventually someone asks you, so what do you believe? You have to say something. And the source argues that a lot of people, even leaders, actually crumble right here.
This is Exercise 3, Gospel Clarity Check from Appendix 2, and this is a fascinating test for anyone listening, whatever your background. The challenge is this. Can you explain the core message of your faith to a skeptic in 2 minutes?
2 minutes. That's a classic elevator pitch.
But here's the catch. You have to do it without defaulting to moralism or self-improvement.
Okay, define those for us. What does moralism sound like in the wild?
Moralism sounds like this. Christianity is about being a nice person, following the rules, and doing good things so the world is a better place.
And self-improvement.
That sounds like, if you believe this, you'll be happier. Your marriage will improve. You'll find purpose.
I feel like that covers about 90% of what I hear people say.
Yeah.
Just be nice and you'll feel better. Why does the source call those a reduced gospel?
Because they're about you. Your behavior or your happiness, they aren't about the message itself. The source argues if you win people over to self-improvement, you haven't won them to the faith. You've just won them to a self-help program.
And when the self-help stops working?
When they get sick or tragedy strikes, they leave.
So what's the alternative? If we can't say be nice, what's the framework?
The guide insists on a four-part narrative arc: creation, fall, redemption, and restoration.
Okay, those are big theological words. Let's break them down. If I'm explaining this to a friend at a bar, what do those actually mean?
All right, let's translate. Creation is how things were meant to be. Design, beauty, connection. Fall is what went wrong. Brokenness, selfishness, the fracture in the world we all feel. Redemption is what was done to fix it. This is the specific intervention of Jesus, not us just trying harder, but a full-on rescue operation.
Yeah.
And restoration is where it's all going, the end of the story where everything is finally made right.
I see. So if you skip fall, you just get everything is fine, just be nicer.
Right. And if you skip restoration, you've got no hope for the future. You have to hit all four notes to tell the whole story.
The guide suggests practicing this by telling the story to 3 different people: a believer, a seeker, and a skeptic.
Yes, because how you explain it to someone who already agrees with you is easy. But explaining it to a skeptic, that forces you to strip away all the jargon. It forces what it calls adaptive thinking. You
Yeah.
can't just memorize a script. You have to know the story deep enough to actually translate it.
Which brings us to the engine room of all this. We've talked about identity, relationships, the message, but what actually powers it?
Prayer.
Now, I know, everyone nods and says prayer is important. It's the standard answer. But this source says we're thinking about the function of prayer all wrong.
It identifies a really specific structural error in chapters 6 through 10. Most leaders treat prayer as preparation for the work.
Like the locker room pep talk before the big game.
Exactly. Or they treat it as support, like calling in air support while the infantry does the real fighting down on the ground.
And the source says,
The source says prayer is the work. It's not the prep for the work, it's participation in the work.
that sounds great on a bumper sticker, but I'm struggling to see the practical difference. How does prayer as the work actually change my Tuesday morning?
Well, they give you the schedule test in exercise 7. This is where the rubber really meets the road. Look at your calendar. Does your schedule treat prayer as fuel, the thing that makes everything else go, or is it just an interruption to the real work?
Ouch. The schedule test never lies. If I look at my calendar, the real work is the meetings, the emails, the strategy sessions.
Exactly. If prayer is the engine of the mission, it should be in the center of the car. But for most of us, we've bolted it onto the bumper. The actionable to-do in Appendix 4 challenges leaders to restructure their entire week.
Not just add a prayer time.
No, to literally block out the prime hours for it, treating it as the most high-leverage activity they do all day.
That's terrifying for a productivity-minded person.
Yep.
You're saying take your most productive hours and just sit in silence.
Yes, because the claim is that more happens in that silence than in all your frantic activity. It goes right back to the waterfall. The river feeds the fall. If you cut off the river to spend more time polishing the rocks at the bottom, the water's going to stop.
That's a great visual. So we've got the engine running. Now, let's talk about the people we send out. I mean, missionaries, or even just sending someone to lead a new project. The source identifies a sent problem.
This is the section on sustaining what is sent, chapters 14 and 15. The problem is what it calls deployment over care. We tend to launch people like rockets. Big commissioning service, everyone claps, we send them off, and then what?
Then we wait for the newsletter with the cool pictures. We just assume no news is good news.
Exactly. We want the highlight reel. But the text asks a really poignant question. What structures exist to care for those who are sent after the excitement fades?
This is what it calls the slow fruit phase, right?
Yes. It's that period, maybe 2 years in, where the adrenaline is gone, the culture shock has set in, and it feels like nothing is happening. No big wins, no impressive numbers. This is where people quit.
And usually when they're in that phase, they feel like they can't tell anyone back home because they're afraid of looking like a failure.
Precisely. If our system is built on momentum, we assume slow means broken. But if our system is built on formation, we understand that slow growth is often the healthiest kind of growth. I mean, trees don't grow overnight.
So we need to move from just launching them, to shepherding.
That's exercise 9. It calls for designing actual care systems. How do you handle re-entry when they come home? Because coming home can be incredibly traumatic. You've changed, but your home hasn't. You don't fit anymore. The source says we have a responsibility to shepherd people through that, not just high-five them and say, welcome back.
It seems like everything in this guide is pushing against the quick fix. It's
Yeah.
all about the long, slow, deep work.
It is. It's arguing that depth is the only way to get true width.
So, practically speaking, how do we start? We've covered identity, efficiency, clarity, prayer, sending. It feels like a massive overhaul.
It is a massive overhaul, but the guide lands in Appendix 4 with an actionable to-do list.
But wait, didn't we start this whole thing by saying doing more isn't the answer?
And that's the paradox. This isn't a productivity list to get more done. It's a list to get the right things done. It starts with a capture and clarify exercise.
Is this like the getting things done method, that open loop idea?
Very similar. You write down every single unspoken expectation, every spiritual goal, every nagging thought. I need to call John. I feel guilty about not praying. I need to plan the budget. You get it all out of your brain and onto paper.
Why? Just to make a list.
To reduce the mental clutter, you cannot be present with people. You can't have that inefficient coffee we talked about. If your brain is spinning with 20 different open tabs, you have to clear the RAM.
Okay, so we clear the RAM, then what?
Then you build what the source calls a rule of life. This is integrative exercise 10.
Rule of life sounds very ancient, like something a monk would have.
It is ancient, and it's making a comeback for a very good reason. Think of a trellis in a garden. A trellis isn't the plant itself. It's the structure that allows the plant to grow upward instead of just crawling in the mud.
A rule of life is your trellis.
It's your trellis. It's not just a schedule. A schedule tells you what to do at 2 p.m. A rule of life defines your rhythms. What are your daily habits that keep you connected? What's your weekly rhythm of rest? Your seasonal pauses? It integrates sharing, praying, and going into a sustainable lifestyle.
Like building the riverbed so the water can actually flow.
Beautifully put. And to keep that riverbed clear, there is a priority filter in the appendix. You have to ask a hard question before you say yes to anything new. Does this align with my core mission of share, pray, go?
And if it doesn't?
Then why are you doing it? That filter is the ultimate guardrail against overcommitment, because if you just keep adding good things without a filter, you end up right back in the momentum trap. You crash.
You know, looking back at that waterfall image,
Yeah.
it really does bring it all together. The water flows because of the source, not the effort. The forest grows slowly. The pool is deep.
It's a picture of endurance. And that is really the main argument of this entire deep dive. True impact doesn't come from frenetic activity. It comes from being formed slowly and intentionally.
It's moving from just being committed to a cause
Yeah.
to being the kind of person who can actually sustain that cause.
Right. And as we wrap up, I think we have to leave you, the listener, with the most provocative question in the entire guide. It's in the integrative questions section, and honestly, it stopped me in my tracks when I first read it.
Lay it on us.
The question is this: if you continue leading exactly as you are today, what kind of disciples will exist 10 years from now?
Wow. That stops you cold. It's not what will you have achieved, but who will be standing there because of you.
Exactly. We always look at next week's numbers. This forces you to look at next decade's people. If you are burned out, hurried, anxious, and shallow, you are reproducing burned out, hurried, anxious, shallow followers. You reproduce what you are, not just what you teach.
That is really sobering. But I guess it's also hopeful, because if we shift to formation, if we adopt these rhythms, we could be reproducing something much, much healthier.
Absolutely. If you become the waterfall, you feed the forest.
We are going to leave you with that thought. Don't rush to answer it. Just let it sit. Thanks for diving in with us today.
What pleasure.
See you next time on The Deep Dive.